to cut the House operating budget.
The House will be in order. The Chair lays before the House communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., January 6, 2011. I hereby appoint the Honorable Michael K. Simpson to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Prayer will be offered by the chaplain.
You, O God, are our refuge and our strength. History has taught us you are a helper close at hand in times of distress. We shall not even fear, even when the whole earth is unstable and seems to rock. Our human frailty has revealed that we can easily be shaken. Nations are in tumult. Mountains of power fall, and economic waves rage and foam. You alone, Lord God, cannot be shaken. Each dawning day finds you as our stronghold. Your voice works wonders over all the earth. Wars are pushed to an ending, but you alone break the bows, snap the spears that pierce the soul. You burn off our shields with your fire, and we hear once again your voice. Be still and know that I am God, supreme over all the nations, supreme over all the earth. O God, be our stronghold, now and forever. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House his approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy.
Join us as we recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 10 requests for 1-minute speeches from each side. For what purpose does the gentleman from South Carolina rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I am grateful to welcome the 4 new members of the South Carolina delegation to the 112th Congress. This past election, the voters of South Carolina let their voices be heard. The message was loud and clear. Limit spending, with the largest Republican South Carolina delegation in over 130 years. The voters can rest assured the message was heard in Washington. These 4 conservative, successful small business leaders were elected based on their principles. Promises to reduce spending, limit government, and attain fiscal responsibility will now be real priorities. The people of South Carolina will benefit the most from this dynamic young team. The enthusiasm they bring is energizing. Congressman Tim Scott, Jeff Duncan, Trey Gowdy, and Mick Mulvaney are welcome to federal public service. We will work together in making this the most accessible and accountable delegation for the people of South Carolina. In conclusion, God bless our troops, and we will never forget September 11th and the global war on terrorism.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, the new Republican majority has decided that today we will read the United States Constitution, which I guess is a good thing. Though like every other American, I can and do read it for myself. In fact, I did it this morning and came across the phrase, promote the general welfare. Next week, the new Republican majority will put forward a bill to repeal the health care reform. to tell seniors, go back to a world where you can choose between your prescriptions and your food. Go back to our children. Go back to a world where an insurance company can deny you coverage because you had the misfortune to be born with a disease. That's what they're doing next week. Listen hard. Listen hard today to those words. Promote the general welfare. I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Texas rise?
Request permission to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, this new Congress must be committed to listening to the will of the people and following the Constitution. Immediately, we must right a wrong that has been forcibly placed like chains on the American people. The unhealthy national health care bill bruises the doctrine of the Constitution. The people don't want the government stealing their individual liberty to make health decisions. Congress must repeal this totalitarian act. In a few moments, Congress this day, on this new day, will read the Constitution on the House floor, the sacred rule of law for this nation. Nowhere in this document of wisdom does the federal government have the omnipotent authority to force any American to buy any product or face criminal penalties, whether it's a car, health insurance, or a box of donuts. The nationalized health care bill is an unconstitutional oppression of the American citizen. We will repeal this injustice, and on this new day, we stewards of the Constitution must right this wrong, this illegal law that has been coerced upon the people without their consent. And that's just the way it is.
For what purpose, the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to condemn the senseless, heinous attack that took place on New Year's Day in Alexandria, Egypt, during a Coptic Christian mass ushering the new year. The suicide bombing that took 20 minutes, that took place 20 minutes into 2011 took the lives of 23 Christians and wounded more than 90 others. Although no one has claimed responsibility for the attack, the Egyptian government has linked the Al-Qaeda terrorist organization to this brutal attack. Whoever the perpetrators may be, their actions epitomize the definition of evil and remind us of the constant struggle around the world against terrorism. Security must remain a priority in Egypt and all freedom nations. This event illuminates the unprecedented prejudice facing the minority population and the evident interreligious struggle and violence that is plaguing Egypt. This deplorable act of violence is yet another example of the escalation of violence against Egypt Coptic Christians, who make up about 10% of the population. I offer my condolences to the families of the victims who perished in the bombing. I hope the Egyptian government honors their promise on a swift and thorough investigation on this vicious crime. I yield back.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise? Without objection.
Well, here we go again. Gasoline, $3, $4, and soon $5 a gallon. Oil at $100 a barrel. Yet America's offshore resources total more than 86 billion barrels of oil and 420 trillion cubic feet of natural gas. Enough oil to replace imports from Saudi Arabia and Venezuela for the next 80 years. But the administration's moratorium says no to American oil and yes to OPEC. We don't have to buy hundreds of billions of oil from OPEC, borrow $900 billion from China, run a massive trade deficit, or raise taxes. The revenues and leases from offshore exploration can bring up to $3.7 trillion in federal revenue to slash our deficit, build clean power plants, clean up our air and water, increase renewables, and rebuild our crumbling highways and bridges, all while creating millions of jobs and trillions in economic output. I hope my colleagues will join me as I reintroduce the Bipartisan American Conservation and Clean Energy Independence Act so we can work on securing America's prosperity and American jobs using American resources. Stop talking, start building. I yield back.
What purpose, the gentleman from California rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak against the reckless attempt to repeal the Affordable Care Act. The new law has already put in place critical protections to help our families across this country. I want to tell the story of one family in my district whose life has been dramatically helped by this law, the Strong family of Santa Barbara. Bill and Victoria Strong's daughter, Gwendolyn, was diagnosed at age 6 months with a rare disease, muscular spinal atrophy. Her care is extremely expensive, and before the new law, the Strongs lived in constant fear that Gwendolyn would reach her policy's lifetime limit, no longer be covered for treatments, and be uninsurable because of her pre-existing condition. The elimination of lifetime caps has given the Strongs peace of mind. They're guaranteed Gwendolyn will receive the care she needs and their families protected from bankruptcy. Repealing these safeguards will take that security away. It would put this courageous little girl at risk of having her health care cut off when she needs it most. Would it put this inspiring family at risk of bankruptcy? I urge my colleagues to stand for all those who are benefiting from the law as the Strong family is. Vote no on repealing the Affordable Care Act. Thank you.
What purpose, the gentleman from Ohio rise?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, while this is my first opportunity to address the House, it won't be my last. The people of eastern and southeastern Ohio sent me here to be their voice, and I intend to be that voice. On their behalf, I will speak out loud and clear on the issues that matter to the working people of my district. People sent me here for one primary reason. They think Congress has lost its way, and my constituents gave me a map they want us to use to get back on the right path. It's a simple map drawn in bold, unmistakable strokes. America wants us to be true to our founding principles, and the roads are open for all, but there are no shortcuts for special interest. But most of all, this roadmap was made in America and paid for up front. That's how our spending must be. We owe it to the taxpayers to disclose what our votes will cost and be clear about how they're paid for. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the map my citizens gave me leads in one very clear direction, toward economic recovery for every American. That's the way I'm headed, and I will cast my votes here with that in mind. I yield back.
What purpose, the gentleman from California rise? Without objection.
All throughout Congress, the Republicans constantly ask, where are the jobs? They asked this last year. Yet in their first major action, the House Republicans are showing their true colors, playing politics at the expense of hard-working Americans. Under the Republican plan to repeal the health reform, small businesses will not be able to receive $40 billion in tax credits that will allow them to cover employees. Insurance premiums will continue to rise, forcing businesses to cut benefits and lay off employees. And they will add to the deficit, exploding to $1 trillion over the next 20 years, creating more uncertainty in our economy. Instead of serving hardworking American families, Republicans would rather have American small businesses serve greedy health insurance companies. Republicans are proving yet again that they are indeed the party of no relief, no health care, no jobs. I urge my colleagues to stand with the American small businesses and workers and resist any attempt to repeal health reform. I yield back.
What purpose, the gentleman from Arizona rise? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in a few moments, the United States Constitution will be read for the first time in a long time in this chamber. And I, for one, Mr. Speaker, am glad to see this welcome day come. I know there are those that will dismiss it as symbolic, but I remember the words of Daniel Webster when he said, "Hold on, my friends, to the Constitution and to the republic for which it stands, for miracles do not cluster, and what has happened once in 6,000 years may never happen again." So hold on to the Constitution, for if the American Constitution should fall, there will be anarchy throughout the world. Mr. Speaker, I hope as we go forward in this new Congress that we will all hold Mr. Webster's words in our hearts. Thank you.
What purpose, the gentleman from Connecticut rise? Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, despite repeated warnings yesterday from groups as diverse as the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Iron Workers, the Laborers, the American Trucking Association, even the Motorcycle Riders of America, the Republicans adopted a new rule which allows Congress to tamper with the Transportation Authorization Fund and the Highway Trust Fund. And despite the protests from the majority that it wasn't doing it, yesterday UBS, Payne Weber, put out a stock advisory that transportation construction companies were being downgraded because of the damage that the Congress did yesterday. Mr. Speaker, the transportation and construction sector of our country is in depression, 25% unemployment. The last thing this country needs is to tamper with the Highway Trust Fund, and yesterday that's what the new majority did. The Democrats will fight to restore the Transportation Authorization Fund, make sure that America has the transportation system that it needs, and get people back to work in the hardest hit sector in the American economy. I yield back.
What purpose, the gentleman from Michigan rise?
Unanimous
consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we began a very important new chapter in the history of this great nation as we began the 112th Congress. And I was so proud to join so many of our new members in taking the oath of office, and the enthusiasm and the commitment that was shown by our new colleagues, as well as those of us who were honored enough to be re-elected, to take on the great challenges facing our nation, I think will be remembered as a historic pivot for our country. The Constitution, which we will soon read here on the floor of the House, states that one of the primary purposes of the federal government is to preserve the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. And for far too long, the federal government has been mortgaging those blessings of our posterity by burying them under a mountain of debt, and that must end. We have a responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to make the tough decisions to cut spending, to eliminate the federal deficit, and to begin to pay down the immense debt that threatens the opportunities that will be available for our children and our grandchildren. Our work will be difficult, but it must be done. Let us all face up to these challenges and get to work. I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
Address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, a new Congress was sworn into office, and just like the one before it, a top priority is to get our economy moving in the right direction. I'm profoundly disappointed, though, that the new majority of the Republicans have decided to take the opposite approach, skyrocketing the debt, denying rights, and making sure we kill jobs. Seniors in my district now have access to better preventative care, helping pay for expensive drugs. Americans who've worked long and hard throughout their lives have earned that peace of mind. Young people in my district are now being put back on their parents' insurance after being denied for pre-existing conditions. Repealing the health care bill will take those benefits away, will kill jobs, will skyrocket the debt, and will ensure that insurance company CEOs make health decisions for you, not you and your doctor. Many of you may know I represent the world-famous Mayo Clinic in my district. They provide the highest quality, patient-centered, and affordable care the world has ever known. And I'd like to leave you with a short quote that they put out right before we voted on the health care bill last year. Reforming health care in America is essential. The status quo is not sustainable. I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Nebraska rise? Address the House for 1 minute. Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday afternoon, a suspended student at Millard South High School in suburban Omaha opened fire. Assistant Principal Vicki Kaspar was killed, and Principal Curtis Case remains in serious condition. After fleeing the school, the student killed himself. This morning, Nebraska has been blanketed by a profound wave of shock and sorrow. My heart goes out to the victims and their families and the innocent school children whose first day back at school was shattered by this nightmarish act. Today, school is closed as counselors begin to help the community to try and cope and make sense out of what can be considered a senseless act of violence. I ask for this body's thoughts and prayers, Mr. Speaker, to be with those students and teachers, their families, and all members of the Millard South community in the aftermath of this horrific tragedy.
What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise? Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today on behalf of my constituent, David Zoltan Brieger, 33 years old, who now has coverage under Illinois' pre-existing condition plan thanks to the Affordable Care Act. David has diabetes, and because of his pre-existing condition, he couldn't get insurance for over 2 years after losing his job. David is absolutely elated that he no longer has to wait for hours in the emergency room to get life-saving insulin. Without coverage, the ER was his only option. Instead, he now has regular visits with a doctor and can avoid the medical crises that had become a frequent nightmare. What happens to David under repeal of the bill? He, like so many others, would lose coverage and once again be at the mercy of insurance companies. We cannot go back. We must reject the Republican call for repeal of the Affordable Care Act. And I yield back.
What purpose? For what purpose does the gentleman from Nebraska rise?
To address the House revising it.
Without objection.
I want to follow up with my colleague Jeff Fortenberry's thoughts. A school in my district, Millard South, endured the ultimate tragedy where a
student who was suspended returned with a gun, walked into the assistant principal's office, shot her. Ms. Casper later died. My profound sorrow of this incident, the ultimate parent's nightmare. My kids attend that school district, and so we were getting the call about lockdown, and I don't think there's anything more disturbing to a parent anywhere than when the veil of safety of a school has been pierced by such violence. The principal that was also shot is going to survive. He's also a neighbor of ours. And so I'm glad that he'll be fine. But I ask this floor and our colleagues on both sides of the aisle to join the Omaha community in expressing the depth of our sorrows, and I ask for your prayers for not only the students of that school, but all of the teachers and the family of the assistant principal who died, and the principal who's fighting for his life right now. Appreciate everyone's concern. Yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
To address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, horrible tragedies like this remind us that there are simply too many guns too readily available to too many children. It's got to stop. But, Mr. Speaker, Ronald Reagan ran for president. He said that any president who does not submit a balanced budget should be impeached. He never did balance a budget. In fact, the only times that our budget has been balanced was during the Clinton administration as a result of what's called pay-go, that you don't increase spending without increasing a concomitant amount of revenue, and in fact, you don't cut taxes without immediately cutting the same amount of spending. That worked. We had 3 successive years of budget surpluses, passed on a $5.6 trillion projected surplus to the Bush administration. But as soon as the new Republican Congress came in at the beginning of the 21st century, they eliminated pay-go. And as a result, we had a $9 trillion fiscal reversal. When the Democrats came back in, we reinstated it. But yesterday, we exempted $5 trillion from pay-go. $4 trillion of unpaid-for budget tax cuts.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And $1.3 trillion of savings we could have gotten from health care reform. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but it's the height of hypocrisy.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
And I first want to extend the sympathies of Colorado and the representatives to our friends from Nebraska. We suffered the Columbine tragedy a number of years ago, so we definitely understand how painful something like this is. But the purpose for me to rise today is to talk about what's been given to this country in the form of the Constitution, and particularly the 14th Amendment, I would say to my friend from Texas, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Until we passed that Affordable Health Care Act, people with pre-existing conditions were being denied equal protection of the laws. We've passed that. They now have freedom from discrimination, but my friends on the Republican side of the aisle want to take away that freedom. That's wrong, and that's wrong for people in my district, for millions of people across the country, because their kids and they and their families and their friends have different physical conditions that require attention and must be covered and not discriminated against. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In a few minutes, we're going to have the reading of the United States Constitution, a show for the American public. For anybody who knows anything about constitutional law knows it's up to 9 men or women on what the Constitution says. When the Constitution was originally drafted, and I love it and I defend it, it didn't give women the right to vote. and it said slavery was permissible. And until the vilified Warren Court, in its correct decision in Brown versus Board of Education, they said separate was equal, and we knew it wasn't. And African Americans were held back with Jim Crow laws. But 5 people, not the whole 9, 5 can make decisions that change the way the Supreme Court is interpreted. Bush v. Gore, an abomination of a case that determined a presidency for 8 years and took away states' rights. And the Citizens United case that funded the opposition, that turned in the majority that the Republicans now have, making corporations the equal of people and putting money into politics, poisoned the political system. The Supreme Court should be who reads the Constitution. They need a lesson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chair would remind all persons in the gallery that they are here as guests of the House and that any manifestation of approval or disapproval of proceedings is a violation of the rules of the House. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move a call of the House.
Under Clause 7B of Rule 20, the Chair confers recognition for that purpose. Without objection, the call of the House is ordered. Members will record their presence by electronic device. Members will have 15 minutes to record their presence.
The House is holding its first vote of the day on this, the second day of the 112th Congress. Here's how we expect this day to unfold. Right now, this procedural vote to bring members to the floor. This is a 15-minute vote, as you can see. This is happening as members of the House are preparing to read aloud the U.S. Constitution, something that apparently has never been done in the history of the chamber. It's unclear just how long that will take, but at the conclusion of the reading of the House, it's expected to begin debate on its first spending cut measure brought by Oregon Congressman Greg Walden, who headed the Republicans' transition team. 2 hours of debate have been set aside. No votes are expected on the resolution. After that, special order speeches to wrap up today. This is all subject to change, but this is what we expect will happen during this second day of the Republican majority. This is live coverage of the House here on C-SPAN. Once again, the first roll call of the day here in the House as members are being called to the floor. This is not officially a vote. It is a procedure to bring members to the floor as they are preparing to read aloud the Constitution. So as you look at the screen, you will not see votes coming in yea or nay. Members are simply bringing in, actually these are not votes. You will see them tally either present or non-voting in that case. But you will see members offering their tally as they come to the floor for the reading of the U.S. Constitution. As this quorum call continues, we are opening up our phone lines to get your thoughts on the Republicans' agenda. We have 15 minutes during this roll call. We have the reading of the Constitution today, the work on the rules package, and the efforts to trim the budgets of leadership, rank and file, and committee offices, and their efforts to repeal what they're officially calling the Job-Killing Health Care Law Act, which may pass the House, but will probably have a tougher time in the Senate. All these things in the Republican agenda, so we are opening our phone lines to get your thoughts on that. Democrats, call 202-585-3885. For Republicans, it's 202-585-3886. Independents, 202-585-3887. Go to our first call, Brant in Georgia on the Republicans line. Go ahead, Brant.
Yes, good morning. How you doing? I was calling to talk about how it's interesting to me that the Democrats have made such a big deal about saying that the Republicans should not even bother to pass a repeal of Obamacare. If they're so sure it's going to fail, why are they worried about the Republicans trying to pass it? I think they're deathly afraid that they're going to have to defend it, knowing that the American people are opposed to it. And when the Republicans display each disgusting part of that 2,000-page monstrosity, it's going to be very hard for moderate Democrats to stay on board with the president.
Hosey is calling from Hardin, Montana on the Democrats line.
Yes, I think it's a way. I think the Republicans are wasting our time on this reform bill. It has already been passed, already been signed into office. They need to worry about more jobs because here in where I live in Montana, there's no jobs. The unemployment rate is sky high over here. But nobody cares about that. They care about the rich. It's always been like that for as long as I've been alive, and I've been alive for 27 years. And they don't worry about nothing about the poor people. They worry about only about the rich people, and that goes from Democrats and Republicans. We need to start getting them together and becoming one.
Mark in Port St. Lucie, Florida on the Independence line.
Yes, good morning. I think it's a great way to start the House session. After all, they all take a pledge to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. It would be great if they knew what was in it. Regarding Rich's call, though, the question becomes, what do the rich do with their money? Basically, they can only eat so much, wear so much, clothes, and buy so many things. Most of them are very protective about their money, and they invest their money, looking at a risk-reward situation. And it's those people who assess their risk and invest their money that create the capital that creates new industries and new jobs in our country.
We've got Mike in Tempe, Arizona on the Republicans line.
Yes, good morning. Just wanted to comment. I think it's a
great start to the 112th Congress that we read the Constitution. I think many Americans today, we need to go back to our high school civics books and understand exactly what the role of the federal government is in regards to our lives and how that is applied today. I think there is, hearing some of the talk shows this morning, there's an air of bipartisanship that is starting to form. And I think we got to let the system work here for the next few weeks in the House of Representatives, and hopefully the Senate can work with the House, and maybe we can get some problems that are facing our country and get some solutions that not only the legislative branch but the executive branch can join in and getting us onto the right track.
Mike, have you read the Constitution?
Yes, I have. In fact, when I was in Washington one time, late Senator Byrd always had a copy of that, and I bought it in a store there in Washington. And it's a document that you forget from high school, but it's a very quite challenging document to read, and yet it has some powerful statements and the inside of our forefathers, and it's very revealing in how that has held on for 220 years in this, as I call it, experiment in democracy. I do have one question real quickly. I noticed on the screen, we're waiting for this quorum call, that there's only 434 total votes. Where's the 435th?
It's a good question.
Okay. Just thought I'd throw that out.
Well, we appreciate that. We will research that, and we'll let you know.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for your call. And next call is Lorraine, if I have this correct. Lorraine from Granbury, Texas.
Yes, I just want to voice my opinion also as well, that I think it's a grand idea that our people in Congress are reading the Constitution. I'm shocked that to hear from the news agency, Fox News, that it's the first time apparently that it's been read. I feel that since the early part of the 20th century, we've just gone downhill as far as our education and upholding the founding fathers and what they did in this country. I'm an immigrant to this country. I came here with my parents when I was 3 years old. I knew about the Constitution, read it. I have it hanging on my wall in my house. I had to do that to become a citizen of the United States. I'm a very proud citizen by choice of the United States. These congressmen that I hear on the screen saying that there's no need to read it, and they actually are scoffing and mocking of it, I'm appalled. I'm insulted. And I'm appalled. Frankly, I feel that every time when we vote and have an election and get new members into Congress, that our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and our Declaration of Independence, all three documents need to be read in the House. Obviously, a lot of these people, especially the liberal-minded ones, don't know what our Constitution contains. And, I've apparently finding out that our higher colleges and universities are not even teaching it in the law schools. They're not even having constitutional classes. They should be studying it. I'm just appalled at what I'm glad that we're finding these things out.
We appreciate your call today, Lorraine. We have an answer to Mark of Tempe's question about the total number of Congress people that will come up when the final tally is reached on this quorum call. It would be 434. As you know, there are 435 members in the House. Oregon Congressman Mark DeFazio missed the swearing in yesterday, and so that's why we'll only have 434 members. Continuing with your phone calls, up next, David from Peter DeFazio. David Fredericksburg, in Fredericksburg, Virginia, on the Republicans line. Your thoughts about the Republican agenda?
Well, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate what you guys do. I ask that not only today that I'm very happy that they're reading the Constitution, and I am also shocked that it has never been done. That amazes me. But I would like to know if C-SPAN would take a poll and ask the American people, or all their listeners anyway, if we the people think that the Constitution ought to be read on a regular basis in our House of Representatives and in our Senate. My feeling is, yes, it should be. That we can no longer allow our politicians and career lawmakers to use it as toilet paper and throw it to one side. The Constitution is a very real document that needs to be read and understood, not only by our legislators, but we the people need to start reading it. We the people, all of us, need to read and understand the Constitution. And I ask forgiveness for not having done so until my later years now. I'm 54 years old, but it's going to be a regular part of my life now to make sure I understand what it is my representatives are supposed to be doing, and if we can't find ones that will adhere to the Constitution, we'll replace them. And that's all I have to say.
Next, Diane from New York, Democrats line.
Hello?
Go ahead. You're calling from New York?
Yes, this is Brian, not Diane.
Brian, sorry about the mix-up.
Oh, that's okay, no problem. Hey, I'm glad I could be on, and I'm glad they're reading the Constitution of the United States today. All I can say is I thought when this country got started, they wanted to have a government, that the government was for all the people, to protect us and help us get a good life together. Somewhere down the line it's been twisted, I think, a little bit too much. There's a lot of people out there that are not doing too well. This is a great country. You're allowed to have an idea, and you can go with that idea. An idea might put money in your pocket. But you got to be able to share, and you got to be able to help the poor and the needy in this country. People that are starving, people out of work. So I wish these politicians, when they go to work every day, would have a good thought in their mind that they're going to work for all the people. And we know what that means. And I think this is a great channel. It gives us an idea of how government works. But in reality, you got to help everybody.
Thanks,
and the whole
Brian.
world has to think that way. Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. As you know, Republicans are making strict adherence to the Constitution a key part of their efforts to reduce the size and scope of the federal government. And today they do plan to read all 7 articles and 27 amendments. This is from the Wall Street Journal today. The Republicans are celebrating the first week back in power by reading the Constitution all on the House floor. Some parts will go unread, though, including the passage that counts slaves as 3/5 of free persons. Multiple Republicans will step forward to read segments. It's not clear whether any Democrats will take part. Credit for the reading idea goes to Virginia Congressman Bob Goodlatte, who keeps a mini Constitution in his jacket so he'll never be caught short. And we're taking your thoughts on the Republican agenda this morning. The numbers on the screen, 202-585-3885 for Democrats. Republicans, your line is 202-585-3886. And for Independents, it's 202-585-3887. Next call is, let's see, Steve in Nashville on the Republicans line. Go ahead, Steve.
Good morning. My comment will be short. I obviously am calling on the Republican line. I'm a Republican, and I am very much encouraged by the unique new thinking of this young 112th Congress, and I applaud it. And really my comment is based more on the comments in the last 2 days since yesterday's swearing in from the Democrats. It is clear that there are some people that just don't have eyes to see. The rhetoric that I've heard on the last 2 days from across the board of the Democrats speaking is we could save a lot of money. You don't need to even have them there. Just put a tape recorder in their chair and just hit the play button, because it's the same old sorry, tired rhetoric that quite honestly has won them some elections. Oh, those terrible Republicans trying to give money to their rich friends. I am so disappointed for Democrats that they do not have representation that actually has a mind to think fresh, eyes to see the dangers and the perils of the things that their party is doing, and really enable Democrats to have representation that helps them to help America. Thank you.
Next, Dean in Lambert, Montana, on the Democrats line.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I am a Democrat, and what I see, unfortunately, in this country is such a division between always labeling Democrats and Republicans. As the Constitution starts, we the people, and we have to, again, look at we the people. It doesn't say we Democrats, we Republicans. I'm very happy that they are going
While
to be
the
reading.
vote
And
will continue, and members
Hold on just a second.
are coming to record their presence, it's the intention of the chair to swear in the gentleman from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio, for his oath of office. The gentleman will raise his right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God? Congratulations. Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the Chair announces to the House that in light of the administration of the oath to the gentleman from Oregon, the whole number of the House is now 435. And the call of the House will continue.
As you saw, Majority Leader Boehner interrupting the call of the House to bring the House floor tally to 435. Peter DeFazio of Oregon just sworn in. So as this final tally comes in, it will reach, we expect, 435 members voting present, and the voting does actually the tally does continue here in Congress. On the floor, we do expect a little bit later today. We expect the reading of the Constitution to take place right after this vote. We're not exactly sure how long that's going to take, but we will show you all of that, and you can follow along on our website, cspan.org. We do have a link to the Constitution. We're continuing with your phone calls. We're going to go back to Dean in Lambert, Montana. She's calling on the Democrats line to get her thoughts on the Republican agenda. Dean in Lambert. Okay, we'll move on to Philip in the Bronx, and he's on the Democrats line.
Hi, good morning, C-SPAN. How you doing today? I think it's just great that the Republicans are reading the Constitution. I am glad to be part of this historical moment. Once I get off the phone with you, I'm going to connect my electronic gear up so I can record it. And the Secretary of Education, he should contact all the educational institutions in the country. The kids in our schools should do homework on this historic day. This is great. I don't think we should read it every day, but it's great, and I love C-SPAN for covering this, and I want to thank you. C-SPAN is a great station than any other station there is. So I want to thank you, C-SPAN, and you have a wonderful day.
We thank you for your call.
On this call of the House, 382 members have responded as president.
Another interruption in the roll call to bring members to the floor as members of the leadership team are assembling on the floor for the reading of the Constitution. We invite your response, your reaction to the reading of the Constitution via social media, Twitter and Facebook. We'll take your tweets, and you can comment on Facebook. Also via our website, cspan.org. That's where you can find links to all of those things.
He's ready. On this call of the House, 396 members have answered the call as present. Call of the House. Call of the House, 406 members have answered the call as being present, quorum being present. Pursuant to Section 5A of House Rule 5, the Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Goodlatte, for the reading of the Constitution. The House will be in order. Members, please take seats. House will be in order. Members, please take seats. Clear the aisles. House will be in order. Members in the rear of the chamber, please take seats. The Chair would remind all members that they should not traffic the well while members are under recognition. Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for the reading of the Constitution. Gentleman may inquire.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, we appreciate the leadership shown to bring this document for reading today, but I do want to inquire of the chair and perhaps the gentleman who is the author of this effort today, Mr. Goodlatte. The language, as I understand it, that we will be reading today does not include some of the original language of the Constitution of the United States. On multiple occasions, amendments have purported to change some of the intent of the original document.
Does the gentleman have a parliamentary
inquiry? I do
inquiry?
have. My parliamentary inquiry is, will we be reading the entire original document without deletion, or will we be reading a document with deletions that may or may not have been accomplished by respective amendments?
Pursuant to Section 5A of House Resolution 5, the chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia to read the Constitution of the United States.
And may I inquire of the gentleman, if I may inquire before we start this process, of the gentleman if he would explain to us so that we will all be on the same page.
The gentleman is not recognized for that purpose.
If I may ask the gentleman, unanimous consent, if I may ask the gentleman to yield for this question. I ask unanimous consent to ask the gentleman to yield for a question.
The gentleman from Virginia is not recognized for debate. This is not a debate.
I'll wait till Mr. Goodlatte is recognized and I'll ask him to yield so we can have clarity of this.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for the reading of the Constitution, not for debate.
If I may ask unanimous consent to ask Mr. Goodlatte to yield for just a question so we all understand the reading.
Does the gentleman from Washington have a parliamentary inquiry?
Yes, my parliamentary inquiry is, may I ask the gentleman to yield for 30 seconds to ask a question of the derivation of this language that we will all be reading in good faith and good spirits today.
That is not in order at this point. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Speaker, as a part of the opening remarks, I will explain and I hope answer the question of the gentleman from Washington. This morning, for the first time in the history of the House of Representatives, we will read aloud the full text of the Constitution of the United States. We hope this will inspire many more Americans to read the Constitution. The text we are reading today reflects the changes to the document made by the 27 amendments to it. Those portions superseded by amendment will not be read. In order to ensure fairness for all those interested in participating, we have asked members to line up on a first-come, first-served basis. I will recognize members based on this guidance. In order to assure relative parity and fairness, I may recognize members out of order to ensure bipartisanship and balance. 2 members, 1 from each party, will be recognized out of order. Each member will approach the podium and read the passage laid out for him or her. The Speaker and 2 members of the leadership of each party will begin the reading, and then I will recognize members in order. I thank the members of both parties in advance for their participation in this historic event, and I thank...
For what purpose, gentleman from California, rise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Point of parliamentary procedure. Now that the process has started, would the gentleman from Washington's original question about parliamentary procedure, would his question be in order at this time?
In light of the gentleman's modicum of debate, that would be appropriate.
Thank you.
If I may make unanimous consent to ask Mr. Goodlatte a question so that we all do understand the nature of the language that we will be reading today. So I would like to ask Mr. Goodlatte if he could explain...
Without objection, the gentleman